I think let's get started. So thank you everyone for being here. It's probably the first time that I've been in a room that everyone would say yes when I'm holding the board. So it feels like a breath of fresh air. I'm Santosh, and Anuja and I founded Student of Bitcoin with the intention that everyone can be a student of Bitcoin, and it's really a matter of time before each person can start their own Bitcoin journey.
And I'm Anuja, and thank you already.
This is going to happen.
Yeah. And I'm Anuja. Thank you so much for being with us in the room today. We're so excited to share a story with you.
I think we should just stand next to each other. Okay. Yeah. Come here. So we're here to talk about finding purpose through Bitcoin. A year ago, we were going through a ton of confusion, not knowing what to do with our lives. And if you ever sat thinking, I want to do something with Bitcoin, maybe I'll go full time. How do I get a job? And if you're ever thinking and in that mindset, this presentation is perfect for you. And we'll go through our story of exactly how we ended up here. So to set set the stage, let's rewind exactly 12 months ago. So January 2023, we're sitting in our living room in Calgary, Canada. It's minus 30 outside, so we're bundled inside. And I just lost my job. I have 10 years of experience in technology, selling technology specifically, and I've been falling down the Bitcoin rabbit hole for many years. And I knew I wanted to do something in Bitcoin, but I wasn't sure what.
And for myself, I've been at Microsoft for 7 years. I was in sales. I absolutely loved what I was doing. And in parallel to this, I was watching Santosh go down his Bitcoin rabbit hole. And this time last year, you'd probably call me like a no-coiner, but I had seen some significant changes in Santosh in how he was questioning things, his optics on certain topics, especially some of our financial decisions. And so it made me really reevaluate, what does my future career look like?
So I'm sure many of you could attest to this. Have you find yourself just endlessly scrolling on Twitter and like an hour passes by? So I was doing that. I was listening to every single Bitcoin content you can think of, podcasts, articles, books. I was studying. I was doing all these things. I was applying to jobs, and I'm like, what the heck am I even really doing? I was even more confused because am I going to get a job? What am I going to do? Meanwhile, she's absolutely killing it at Microsoft, and I'm just there marinating in confusion.
And even though from the outside it looked like I was killing it, I think internally I was always stressed out. It's a sales job, high-paced environment, constantly worried about my quotas. Even though I loved what I did, I found that the frequency of my burnouts were only increasing, and I knew it was a time for me to take a break and really figure out what I want to do next. And the two aspects of my job that I truly, truly enjoyed were helping people and the tech itself and how it's changing people's lives. And being an engineer myself and a woman in tech, the gender disparity is very aware. I'm very aware of it. And so I naturally gravitated towards empowering more women in tech. And so I knew that was an area I really wanted to get into. I just didn't really know how to get started. And as I was going through this sort of self-discovery, you shall call it, Microsoft went through some major, major layoffs like many other tech companies did. And so I realized that something that was my identity and I was holding so close to my heart could be taken away from me just like this. And so I was on the same boat as Santosh in terms of being confused and sort of what to do next.
So as we were marinating in this state of confusion, I had a conversation with my brother where he talked about this 100-day push-up challenge. So I'm sure you would have come across 100-day squat challenge, 100-day meditation, 100-day savings. And that's when I had the eureka moment. Why can't we have a 100-day Bitcoin challenge? And at that point, I just really wanted to improve and further Bitcoin's adoption. So I defined it as one interaction per day for 100 days where I enable someone, a family, a friend, a business owner, to take an action where Bitcoin moved from one address to another. So something that was time-boxed, 100 days, something I could measure. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't have a job. I was like, screw it. Let's see how this turns out.
And I remember this day clearly because I come home from work and Santosh is so excited to tell me about this 100-day challenge. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, cool, I think. I thought he was a little crazy. I had no idea how he was going to pull this off.
So the early stages wasn't too bad. I mean, the first 2 weeks I went to my mom, my dad, my brother, Anuja. Hey, this is how you stack. Hey, this is how you store in a wallet of Satoshi or a Phoenix. Hey, this is how you secure it in a cold storage. This is how you spend it using Bitrefill. And it was great. But then week 3 and 4, reality set in because here I am sitting in front of my computer trying to make these interactions happen, but no one cares. I was so desperate that I told my friends I'll give you $5 to buy gift cards using Bitrefill. No one took me up. And this is when I was like, oh shit, maybe I bit off more than I could chew. And in desperation, you innovate. This is where the Bitcoin whiteboard was born that you're seeing there. I figured I needed to leave the computer and just go to the streets. So I got a whiteboard, wrote free Bitcoin demo, gathered up all the courage I could find, and walked into a mall. I felt very insecure, but after an hour and a half, someone stopped and actually asked me for a demo, and I would say that moment changed my life because now I was invigorated. And then I held it all around the city. I took it hiking. I went to the ski hill in front of the library, went in the mall again, got kicked out. And through all of these instances and interactions, I ended up talking to tons of strangers. I was called a scammer. I was pushing a Ponzi. Name a misnomer, I've been told. But the silver lining, though, I ended up having conversations with 50 to 60 people, but sent them their first sats to almost 30 individuals. So that was 30 interactions that I could have never done if I stayed in front of Twitter.
Okay, so if I thought he was a little crazy with the idea of this challenge, this is when I'm like, okay, he's full on crazy. And I remember at one point, like this first sign here, that's the street I used to work at. And I'd be going out for lunch with my coworkers. And I'm not going to lie, I was secretly hoping we would not run into him. But honestly, I was so inspired by him. Like every single day he would get up and he would write a different sign on this board and just trial and error and see what worked. And honestly, it was so inspiring to see that, like regardless of what people were saying, and the impact he had on strangers to hear about some of the questions and stories he would tell me after spending his hours on the streets, where it was just amazing to hear.
The coolest part of all of this was someone from halfway around the world got inspired, got his own whiteboard, stood in front of Kampala University to tell people Bitcoin is monetary technology. So this is when I knew I was onto something, because someone in a different part of the world wanted to do something similar to what I was doing. And I'm like, you know what, I got to keep going. And in that sense of motivation, I started getting creative. I wrote 2 books. It's visual books that I have there hanging out. I started realizing that businesses is really my calling. I mean, I'd been doing it for my career for 10 years, and I should just be doing that for Bitcoin. I was also getting out of my shell. I was happy to speak to strangers. So I started speaking to waiters, waitresses, tip them, business owners. And then one day I was talking to my barber. We brought up inflation, the debasement of the Canadian dollar. And after a good hour-long chat while I got a great haircut, he accepted Bitcoin as a form of payment. And now he accepts Bitcoin to save for his son's future.
This one is a really fun one. So we're Indians, and when babies are born, traditionally we would gift them gold, but obviously this guy wanted to give them Bitcoin. So he definitely convinced me, and we specifically made sure that the parents will only give these to their kids once they're 18, so then we can win the Best Uncle and Aunt Award.
We'll have to wait 18 years to find out. I had a farmer in Calgary who used to supply me with beef in return for Bitcoin. And we had worked on self-custody on a cold card prior. But one day he came up to me and he said if I could help him run a node. And he was very curious because I'd been asking all my family and friends and no one really cared about a node. But here comes this farmer, and it turned out he wanted his own node to improve his privacy and security because he'd be broadcasting the transactions through his own blockchain rather than someone else's ledger. And that's when it dawned on me that there's so many different use cases for Bitcoin, and everyone's going to meet it in different angles because they also learn differently, and their needs for their business and their personal lives will vary. Now, by now I'm like fully out of my shell. I can like be in the middle of the street, scream Bitcoin, and I have no hesitation. And I got invited to speak at 2 meetups in Toronto and Calgary about why businesses should adopt Bitcoin as a form of payment and as corporate treasury. And I got to meet Jimmy Song, which was wild because he's a legend and I'm like a nobody who was just in this random 100-day challenge. And here I am meeting Jimmy Song in Toronto, and he spoke after me. So I opened for Jimmy Song. That was a wild moment where I couldn't really fathom, and it was a blessing.
And honestly, for myself, I would say these meetups were one of the turning points because this is when I actually saw real people, like outside of the Twitter posts that Santosh would show me, that there is actually these local communities and they're using Bitcoin to solve real problems. It honestly just made it more real for me.
Biggest takeaways, Bitcoin is so misunderstood. People have zero idea. You're on the street and they're clueless. But in learning that, I also came to realize there isn't a one size fit all. Everyone learns differently. Everyone's going to have different pain points, and we can't expect a silver bullet to help everyone understand Bitcoin the way an individual does. But biggest takeaway for me was really businesses would be the key to network effects. I could stand with this board for 100 hours and speak to 100 humans and only influence 100 humans. But if I use that same board and went and spoke to 100 businesses, I could impact potentially 100,000 people. And that's when it finally dawned on me that my purpose in Bitcoin really has to be with the businesses. And for me right now, it's more so the mom and pop shops or the individual selling corn on the street, because if they don't innovate, then their livelihood is absolutely tarnished, rather than the Pepsi and Co. or the large conglomerates who, they're okay for a little while.
And in terms of finding purpose through this journey. And so even though I wasn't a Bitcoiner earlier last year, I think witnessing Santosh go down this journey, prior to that, I had imagined a certain way of life for us, right? And I was made aware that that lifestyle is referred to as the golden handcuffs, and there is nothing wrong with that lifestyle, and thanks to Jimmy Song for that. But as I was seeing life through an orange lens, it made me question, it made me curious to understand, what could our life look like on the Bitcoin standard?
So we were accustomed to putting ourselves in uncomfortable positions because we traveled in the past, but we knew to really see what this new Bitcoin life could look like, we really needed to uproot what was normal life. So we ended up selling all our belongings, our home, packed to 40-liter bags, and then hit the road with our whiteboard. And our goal really is to get to as many Bitcoin communities around the world and try to make a difference, lend a hand, and hopefully perpetuate Bitcoin as a form of payment for all of us. But let's come to what's important. What the hell does this all mean for you and lovely individuals? How can you find purpose? So many of you are already working on different projects, so you probably have purpose. But if there's one step further that you could go, you don't have to do the 100-day challenge. You could do a 30-day challenge. You could keep it simple. Maybe go to a friend, go to a family member, see how you can make Bitcoin move. It'd be a great experiment for you to actually understand some of your gaps in your learnings and what you truly may not understand through Bitcoin when you actually teach someone.
And we want to share some examples of things that worked for us. Now, this is just based on our experience and the type of skill set we have. We're very people's people, so we just go out and talk to people. But if you're a developer, if you're more technical, I'm sure there's more examples you can find in your niche, and please share those with us if they work. But one of the things that we did quite a bit was try to tip our servers. And if they were hesitant to accept tip in Bitcoin, we would still provide them or give them tip in the local currency, and then ask if they would be willing to accept Bitcoin on top of that as tips, and the success rate is pretty high for that. We also did talk to a lot of businesses, so a lot of our family and friends that own small businesses, you can try to do the same and really try to figure out what their pain points are and see if Bitcoin can solve those challenges for them. And then if you're a little crazy like Santosh, and I guess myself now, you can go get a whiteboard, write a fun little message, and hit the streets and get out of your comfort zone.
You can go put Luke's message, get off zero on a whiteboard, and go to the streets and see how people react. You'll never know what they'll say. Those are actually meant to be flags, but you get it. That's Switzerland, Liechtenstein. We're now in Uganda. We'll just leave it there. So our plan is to continue just traversing the globe to go to as many Bitcoin communities as we can and lend a hand. And we just... No, it's okay.
Well, before he moves on, I did want to just add that also as we're going around these communities, we're going to try our best to have a big focus on women that own small businesses as well. And again, going back to the fact that there's already a huge gender disparity in tech we don't want to replicate that in Bitcoin. And the earlier we start, the better. So that is going to be a big focus for Santosh and I.
For the next few months, we'll actually be parked up in Uganda. We recently launched a juice shop called Juicy B with the goal to make Bitcoin fun, approachable, nutritious. And we're hoping that this can serve as a model for the local community on what benefits Bitcoin can provide when it is adopted as a standard for a business owner. And of course, also make it open source so it's a blueprint for the rest of the Bitcoin community to take it to their own respective countries.
And a huge shout out to our partners from Gorilla Sats, Afan, and Brendan. It has been phenomenal working with them. They are some of the hardest working, talented individuals we know, but also so much fun. If you don't know them, get to know them. They're amazing, and we're so excited to see where we're going to take Juicy B.
And remember that crazy guy that was holding a whiteboard earlier on? Yeah, that's the crazy guy here. So if I didn't do the challenge, I wouldn't have met him on Twitter. I wouldn't have ended up in Kampala with Anuja, and we wouldn't have a juice shop together. So it's crazy to think what one challenge has changed our lives. And we would have never thought that we'd be in Uganda for 3 months. And we'd be remiss to also shout out to the Dadas, because the Dadas did show up for our launch of our juice shop and helped us out. And I feel if there's one big takeaway that you can walk away from this chat, it's really just put yourself in uncomfortable situations, because that will lead to tremendous growth that you could have never imagined.
And last few parting words from me. I just want to say to the Bitcoiners out there, just know that your loved ones are on this journey with you, even though sometimes it seems like they're not. Organically, there will be a spark and curiosity, and just be ready to meet them wherever they are on their journey. Because Santosh was very patient with me. It took a while, but here we are. And thank you so much for listening to us today.